Welcome into Northside Territory, Foul Territory Network's Cubs podcast. I'm Sahadev Sharma with my partner, Patrick Mooney. We are back at it in the new year, Patrick, 2025. We are hoping for good things for all of us, and hopefully it's a much more entertaining season than the average-ishness.
We're focused on marginal value and consolidation of podcasting, things like that. Kind of waiting to see how the market develops. Waiting, hanging back. Obviously, it's the true holiday is really Cubs convention. We'll get into that next weekend, but a lot on the horizon. Good stuff on the way.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, there better be because it has been slow since Kyle Tucker was traded to the Cubs. And, not much has happened. And it's not like the rest of baseball. The hot stove is not burning. And this is normal. This isn't crazy when Christmas hits and then the New Year's. But it's a little slow right now. We got the Corbin Burns surprise signing. That was a little out of left field. I don't think anybody really had that on their radar, him going to the Diamondbacks. So I guess the big names are off the board in that sense, but maybe Roki Sasaki is holding up the market in some sense. That should be coming to a conclusion sometime around Cubs convention, I would expect, right? So we could be hearing about that in the next week to 10 days. But right now, the Cubs have made some smaller moves to start the year, right? Like this isn't earth-shattering news. Vidal Brujan traded to the Cubs for Matt Mervis, kind of two underwhelming prospects, former highly thought of prospects that haven't panned out yet. But Brujan is someone that, we've known that the Cubs need either a left-handed or switch hitting versatile infielder, someone that can kind of play all over the place. Isaac Paredes is gone. They have a hole at third base. They took Gage Workman with the Rule 5 pick, and now they've traded for Brujan. Gage Workman, Vidal Brujan, none of these guys are the type that, coming into the season, we're going to be like, this is a guy that's a difference maker. But it's clear what the Cubs are looking for there when they acquire someone like Brujan.
Yeah, I mean, with some of these guys, I look back and particularly the earlier stages of the Theo Jed regime and other certain cycles where it's like, why bother writing about some of these guys when they're just going to get like DFA'd a week or two later? I mean, we'll see how some of these shake out, but clearly we know what they're targeting, right? I mean, it's that infielder you just mentioned. The bullpen stuff is never going to stop. Maybe they get another starting pitcher. I'd be surprised if they didn't. And I do think part of the pace of this too this week is what I was told is arbitration week. I think that's what agents and front offices are really focused on, the exchange of salary numbers for this upcoming season, either reach an agreement. In rare cases, maybe it's a multi-year agreement, or teams now are in this, file and trial stage where essentially the Major League Baseball central office encourages or strongly encourages teams, to make a deal before the deadline or take them to an arbitration hearing, which really no one wants. Neither side really enjoys that process. So, I mean, the two big ones here would be Justin Steele and new Cub Kyle Tucker.
When's the date for that? Do you know the exact date off the top of your head? Sorry, I'm putting you on the
I think it's Thursday or Friday. It's also one of those things you kind of see in different places, but it was just, someone who I was communicating with earlier this week was like, arbitration week is the focus right now, which may slow some of the bigger stuff. And also it's kind of like you get to this point, right, of like, if you don't sign right before Christmas, the next kind of leverage point is when players start showing up in spring training. So maybe you wait it out a little bit. And we were talking about this off the air too, of like, there's a lot of good bullpen names out there. I mean, remember it was a year ago. What was it, like Matt Stram signed with the Phillies, and it was like, oh,
Right.
and now it's like, all right, Cubs will probably wind up with a really good like name pitcher for their bullpen, right?
Right. Well, so they got it. It looks like they have their lefty, right? They have their lefty in Caleb Thielbar. That they needed one. He has had some really solid seasons with the Twins. Last year, the strikeouts went down, the walks went up, but everything else was fine. Like there was a lot of, he had some odd things going on. I've talked to some people, both with the Cubs and outside the org, that they like this move. As far as he's not. Again, this isn't a needle mover. This is a smaller move. This isn't something that completely transforms the season like Kyle Tucker, but it's a good ad. And now we have to think about, they are going to add a bigger reliever. Who is that going to be? How willing is Jed to get out of his comfort zone? My guess is it's exactly what you just said. We're at the point now that he's not going to feel like getting out of his comfort zone. We're too far along. There's too many relievers out on the market still. Big names, solid names, whatever it may be. Whether it's Kirby Yates, someone like Jeff Hoffman, we keep hearing about him possibly starting. Maybe that's what his leverage. Tanner Scott is still out there. I would be really surprised if he ends up with the Cubs. That's another lefty, but like I'd be shocked if he ends up with the Cubs. That is just not a Jed Hoyer
Yeah,
move.
it is like I give like a 4-year deal.
Yeah,
whatever the projections are, like 4 times 15 or 20. Like,
yeah,
no,
yeah. That's not like it just doesn't. That's not their MO. But I'm saying, like, there's big names out there, and then there's solid names out there. They're going to end up with someone you've heard of that is a quality reliever. And you just have to hope it doesn't end up like Hector Neris, right? They need to make sure it's a quality reliever. But yeah, I think that's probably, when we talk about what are the remaining needs, I would say, for me, when I look at this team, I'd say that's probably my number one when I say remaining need. That, like, I'd be surprised if they go into spring training and don't have that guy. I'm curious. I wonder if that's their number one priority, right? Or is it still starting pitching? Which, yeah, they added Matthew Boyd, but they've been trying since that Matthew Boyd move to continue to add starting pitching. We know this. Like, we know they were in on Luzardo. Is this a trade? Is this what we're talking about with the market kind of being slow, and then someone lingers out there? Jack Flaherty doesn't have the QO attached to his name, still lingering on the free agent market. That's the type of stuff we have to be paying attention to. I wouldn't rule out a trade either. Just because Luzardo it was traded doesn't mean the Marlins are closing up shop. That's a team that's in full on rebuild, and it seems like Bendix kind of wants to set up his own. He's trying to rebuild, and he's trying to bring in his guys and target specific types of players and all that. And this is a full on rebuild. So I wouldn't be surprised if Miami is moving guys. There's like Arizona just signed Burns. Are they willing to move anyone? Yeah, like those are the types of things. Yeah, I think we have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, for whatever reason, those Marlins talks fizzled out, and we're not exactly sure what happened, but clearly it shows a lot of interest, and the Cubs still have those trade chips available. There are some interesting names out there, whether it's the old guy, Scherzer, Verlander. There's like serviceable guys. I mean, like Kyle Gibson hasn't signed anywhere yet. Like just a guy like that. Hoffman, great stuff, wants to start. Worst case, he'd become like your best reliever tomorrow, right? Like, so most accomplished reliever. Just looking at the depth chart now, I mean, some of these guys are going to regress, some are going to get injured, but it's a nice foundation. It's just that they just need more. And this is something that Craig Counsell, Jed Hoyer, and Carter Hawkins obsess over. And so it'd be surprising to not see what a legit starter, maybe not a top of the rotation in his prime guy, and a legit proven late inning reliever. And I do think, I don't know, you look at this division, you got a couple of teams that have not spent a single dollar on a free agent yet. It's a division, once again, just there for the taking. And so it will be interesting to see what they do leading into Cubs convention and sort of what the tenor is by the time we get to the Sheridan in downtown Chicago, because I think it's going to be another one of those years where there's going to be a lot of interesting names out there. The Cubs will still have some flexibility, and they're still, I don't know. I don't see a 90-win team yet on paper. Do you?
Oh, no, not on paper. This is like 90 wins is outperforming projections, Patrick.
That's exactly.
Right now. I wrote like a roster, like kind of overview. Mm-hmm. And one thing I was kind of surprised by, I don't think I really processed it. And especially, it's even odder now that Matt Mervis was traded. They don't have a backup first baseman. Like, I don't know who, like, I know that's not like the most important thing on your roster, but like, it just seems odd to me. Like, who plays first base when Michael Busch needs a day off or he gets hurt? Like, I don't know right now. So you have to add someone like that, just even like a veteran, that like a minor league guy that you throw on the Iowa roster. Cause I don't know what, yeah. I mean, my guess would I mean, that's not happening, right? Let's make sure we don't get fans hopes up. I would think it has to be a right-handed hitter too. I would think so. But that and I still think, like, even though we talked about it earlier, with all the guys that they have, like, do they need to get that stopgap at third before Shaw, or are they going to push Shaw to start the season and try and get that extra draft pick if he can win Rookie of the Year? I don't know. Like, those are the types of, that's something that I'm really curious about right now. The first base thing is not a big deal. It's not a huge deal. You find someone eventually that slips through the cracks, and it's like signs a minor league deal, or it's your bench guy. You prefer that the guy can play more positions, right, than just first base, because like having a first base only guy, or he has to be like a pretty good bat that can be a DH every once in a while. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out. How those two spots, they're not unless the thinking changes. Alex Bregman isn't going to be their starting third baseman. Things like that aren't happening. So we like how they put this together and get to that 90-win team is going to be it's a little. Right now, there's no obvious move for those spots, at least that I'm seeing. But I guess until we started hearing the rumors, Kyle Tucker, like, it came out of nowhere too. So who knows what they have planned? The bigger stuff is obviously starting pitching and relieving, and I think those will be addressed. Like, those are the things that maybe by the time Cubs convention wraps up, we'll know what they're doing there. And like I mentioned before, Sasaki probably, like what you said with the arbitration, makes sense. And then Sasaki probably kind of is kind of a domino effect there, perhaps.
For sure. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the same way that Soto kind of created a chain reaction, I think we'll see that in the back half of January. It's funny when you mentioned the first base stuff, because they have to get this right. The Cody Bellinger money has to be reallocated at least in full. Obviously, they should just keep spending more when you're this close. Right. But take all that money and you have to deploy those resources the right way. I mean, that's kind of obvious, but Cody Bellinger was a real nice fit for a lot of teams. Maybe he was a tad expensive. There's some unpredictability to it. He'll probably hit better at Yankee Stadium than at Wrigley Field. What Wrigley Field turned into last year. But yeah, like what happens when you already have two middle infielders who are coming off surgeries at the end of last season. Third base is a question mark at best. Maybe Matt Shaw is the rookie of the year next year, and asked and answered. But Michael Busch is certainly a nice hitter at a very affordable salary. They think he's a Gold Glover, but there's not a ton of major league track record there either. So it just kind of goes back to kind of the weird spot this team is in, of kind of all these interchangeable pieces on the pitching side, some clear holes that have not been addressed. And then just you add Kyle Tucker to that lineup. And before we could even put together a mock lineup, Cody Bellinger's always traded to unload salary. So, this closing stretch here of the offseason is going to be massively important for this front office.
Yeah, you bring up a good point that I hadn't touched on before in this episode, and fans are probably getting a little restless about that money, right? The Bellinger money. I know it's, what has it been, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? I don't know. The holidays have me in a blur. Don't really know how much time has passed. But yeah, that money, they cannot sit on it. And they've spent very little of it, right? It's Thielbar, and that's it. Am I missing anyone that they've signed since then? That's not where the money's going, right? It's not. They didn't move Cody Bellinger and then say phew, we can sign Caleb Thielbar now.
Right.
That money has to go somewhere, and it's not not just that, right? It's what you said. They have a lot more money to spend than just that. And if I'm looking at roster resource, it says they're at 193 luxury tax. That's 2025, 193. Okay. And that's probably a little low. Let's say they're at 197. Let's put another 4 million on there. Okay. 197, 198. That's they have about 40 million, let's say, to spend. Maybe 35. Let's say 35 million to spend. That should be enough to get you some solid players, especially if you're making trades. They should be able to take care of this roster without much stress, I guess, when I say stress, financial stress. They should be able to do that. How they allocate those funds, how close they get to the luxury tax threshold. I think these are things that fans are going to be up in arms about until they spend that money, right? Until we head into spring training, all the free agents are off the board, and the roster is set, and we can say this is the team, right? Or maybe it'll take as long until we go to Japan and see what the team looks like, right? But they have that. I think that's probably a kind of an underrated thing that was underrated, at least that I overlooked just in the past hour at least. Fans, like I said, I'm sure are well aware and stressed about it, but those spending that money and making sure you don't just that, it cannot be. We said it at the time. This isn't a salary dump in the pure sense, right? It's a reallocation of funds. Okay, go spend that. Right, make sure that we're not wrong on that, or that you don't miss an opportunity here, and be aggressive when the time calls for it.
Yeah, I mean, very rough back of the napkin math here. I mean, Bellinger's money gets you a nice starting pitcher and a nice reliever fairly easily, right? I mean, this is not. It kind of goes back to really that Jed's press conference right after the season ended. Of he feels a very stable, solid roster without like huge holes, with a clean financial sheet, but like Tucker is obviously a great player. Like that is a move. I don't care what Cam Smith does 7 years from now. Like that was a move you have to make. But like, what are the other moves to kind of build around him? It's the Craig Counsell thing all over again. You're going to hire Craig Counsell, but then not really follow through in free agency, and so
Right.
bring in the big name, but then still take a very measured approach and try to win on the margins and try to get the details right. It's just I don't know. There's going to be they don't really get the benefit of the doubt at this point, but there's a huge opportunity in front of them. I mean, I really think one or two moves, you'll be like, wow, like this team should win the division.
Right.
Because St. Louis isn't trying to win the division this year.
No, not at all.
I mean, one of these years, the Brewers will have to take a step back. The Pirates,
think, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Pirates are not exactly going full throttle. And look, I think the Reds are going to be pretty good. I think Francona, their talent, that ballpark, I don't know. I think they'll be an interesting team. I think they can give the Cubs a nice challenge. And there's always going to be surprises, but when we go down to Mesa, like there's no reason why the expectation shouldn't be winning the division. Like, come on.
Right. And it doesn't seem like anyone's being super aggressive right now outside of the Dodgers, just acting like the Dodgers.
That's a good point.
And maybe the Mets to a degree, but they've kind of. I mean, I guess they've made plenty of moves. They gave the
guy the biggest contract in the history of professional sports.
I was thinking outside of Soto, and then I was like, no, they signed Clay Holmes, they signed Sean Manaea. They've done plenty. Them and the Dodgers kind of set the standard when it comes to finances. The Yankees have done a good job of spreading the Soto money around. Exactly what we were talking about with the Cody Bellinger money. Like the Cubs need to behave in that manner, kind of spread that money around. Then if you're not spending it on Cody Bellinger, we'll see what they do. I think this maybe by the time Cubs convention is done, we'll have some news to talk about, something real, some more action happening. That's more than just like these smaller moves. But for now, that's what's going on. It's not the most entertaining holiday stretch of baseball hot stove action, but it's the reality that we're dealing with. And I do think it kind of just, as annoying as it is for the fans, it does set up well for what Jed Hoyer loves. Right? The way this is kind of dragging on, it could end up well for him, just like it ended up well in the sense that like was Cody Bellinger's season perfect? No, but the way that played out was kind of how he wanted it to play out at the time. So we'll see what these next 10 days, 2 weeks have for us. It's going to be critical. Like Patrick, we're a month away from like heading to Mesa. Like I think people like they report early this year because of Japan. So
we should start planning.
Yeah. That's an off-air meeting that we could have. Well, this is our first episode of the new year. Thanks everyone for listening. We had a great first year. It wasn't even a full year. You guys gave us a lot of support, so thank you so much. We appreciate it. Make sure to continue to support us. Subscribe, rate, and review. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please subscribe to The Athletic, where Patrick and I are on top of everything Cubs all off season and into the spring training and all summer long. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. This is Northside Territory. Take care.